Welcome to this first video I'm going to be making. The people at Warcradle Studios sent me this lovely little box to review. They contain the new Sprue for the Enlightened fleet in Dystopian Wars. It came with 2 bases. I expect it might be more when the actual full release box comes out, but it does have 2 SRS tokens in it. Inside the box you will find 2 identical pieces of plastic, it'll make 6 submarines and 2 cruisers in this way. Now the first thing I really like about Warcradle Studio plastics is that they include those small little tabs that are found all around the sprues, just so it's a bit more stable and there's less chance of it being damaged in transport. Now, the other thing that I immediately noticed, finally, are these new plastic whale tokens that they've included. It's great that they are finally available and we no longer have to use the cardboard things that were provided in the starter set. Now, in the sprue you will find the 3 halves that make up the hull of the new submarine types, and then you can assemble them either as Praxilla or Diogenes submarines, depending on what front you take. Essentially all the other bits are used to make the new cruiser. And the new cruiser actually builds 4 variants, but they're all based on that same hull, and I really like that it is one single piece. And it's actually incredibly smart the way they did it, because the mold line runs all across the bottom. There's no annoying parts where it might run across a bunch of rivets, which is always a nightmare to remove the mold lines then in these cases. Now, there's also a bunch of generators included, 5 of them, the 5 traditional ones, but there's always also the 2 new ones, the null generator and the clone generator that finally come into this kit, so that will go great with your Hypatia cruisers. There's still the traditional particle beamers as you'd expect, but also the 2 new Sturginium agitators, which is also a very welcome inclusion. There's only 2 of them though, so use them smartly. When you turn over the plastics, you see the small little launchers to form the Plinius cruisers, and also you get a better view of the engines for the cruiser part that can be found there. These are also the back bits. I've yet to figure out how to magnetize every variant. That will be for a later video. Some very small fiddly bits, including those little triangles, and they will essentially decide whether or not the cargo carrier is sort of outside, like it is in the missile launcher tube, or it's just a simple flat one to make the merchantman the Claudius class. Then you will find the 2 bits that make up the top of the hull, the superstructure, and that will be sort of what you find on those plastics. Now I've gone ahead and grabbed some of my old frigates to sort of compare it to the size of the new submarines, and well, the hull parts are roughly the same size as the old frigates, so if you attach the nose part you will probably end up with a ship that is a fair bit longer than the other one. And I also went ahead and grabbed one of my cruisers. This is a Loveless cruiser. That came from the different plastic sprue, obviously. But when we sort of put it next to the new one, just looking at the hull, you'll see that's a pretty good size match. It does come across as slightly wider, the new hull, which sort of makes sense because it's a wider back bit, and the superstructure is also a bit more back compared to the new one, but overall still an enormously sleek design. Now it's all good and well comparing it to other Enlightened fleet parts, but you also want to compare it to a typical 28mm figurine, so I got out some skeletons from Warhammer, and as well as the by now ubiquitous Primaris Lieutenant. And as you can see, the Lieutenant will be roughly the same size as those submarines, so yeah, they're not small pieces. And of course the cruiser just flat out dwarves the size of a Primaris Lieutenant, which is ironic because that's roughly the same cost that you pay for. Now, one final thing I wanted to talk about is these small bases you get included into them. They're roughly 40mm rounds, but they come on the typical Warcradle plinth bases, and they are very handy to stack up. You sort of are supposed to stack them up with empty bases that all just slot in. Now, at first I was a bit weirded out that they didn't stack up properly, but that's because I forgot that they come with these very handy little tabs on the bottom, as you can see soon, where you hold standard 5x2mm magnets, and it's made in such a clever way that you can just remove some of them. It takes 2 of them to magnetize it to a magnetic carrying case, and if you just remove them, then it will stack perfectly. Well, that's essentially the contents explained of the box, and stay tuned for some more videos explaining what the rest will be like, and I hope to catch you then. I will probably try to give a bit of an update when I get around to painting them. See you then.